Hey sneak peekers, it's Morgan here sitting down with Emily Kinney from The Walking Dead, who's also here performing music from her new album coming out next week. So starting off, for our viewers that are watching this from under their rock, will you talk about your character on The Walking Dead?
Sure, yeah. So I play Beth Greene. I came in on the second season of the show when the group finds a farmhouse and they find a family that has been surviving. And so I play one of those survivors in the farmhouse. And then as we've gone along throughout the seasons, become part of this group that's kind of this small group of survivors during the zombie apocalypse.
I always thought Beth was kind of interesting because she was one of the first characters we saw since Rick that we got to see her have her world shattered and then become part of this new world.
Yeah.
With that, also her being so young, like being a young character that's reacting from zero.
Yeah.
How do you relate to Beth? Like, do you see a lot of similarities between you and Beth, or do you not see yourself as very similar people?
I mean, there's definitely certain similarities. She grows up in a very rural community, and I grew up actually in Nebraska. And so, yeah, there's definitely certain similarities. There's also things like, obviously, she's into music. I'm also into music. She was brought up in sort of a more religious family. I was also. So there's, she has a sister. I have two sisters that I'm very close to. So I think there's definitely similarities and definitely things that she's going through as a teenager that I've also thought of and felt like I've gone through as a teenager as well.
To that point, were there any challenges playing a teenage character? I mean, I know most people play characters younger than they are, but having to get to a point where you're playing a character that hasn't had all the same life experiences that you had simply because they're younger, were there any challenges into getting into that mindset for the character?
Well, there's definitely just the fact that you don't know quite as much, I guess. But I've always felt like it was easy in some ways for me to play a teenager because I remember going through some of those struggles, and I feel like some of those struggles I still deal with when it comes to like maybe, identity and not knowing always, not being sure of yourself, not knowing what the right thing to do is. I mean, I think that one thing that you do realize as you get older is that you always kind of feel like that. Everyone always kind of feels like a kid trying to figure out the world around them. But then you just get more comfortable with not knowing, So, and it's something that, I've been playing younger than I am for a while. And a lot of my friends, actor friends are the same. I did Spring Awakening and I made a lot of really close friends and we were all, playing 15-year-olds, but we were actually in our 20s, So, it's something that I have been doing for a minute. So, yeah, I love it because I love being able to tap back into that part of my life.
So, in going into the role, were you a fan of the comics and the show before you got on, or was it kind of a new thing once you became a part of the show?
Yeah, I knew of the comics, but I wasn't necessarily someone who was like reading them every time a new one came out, that kind of thing. And I knew of the show, and I had seen the first 6 episodes, which were really exciting and amazing, and like everyone else, felt like, oh wow, this is going to be a really exciting project. So once I got the part, then I watched everything, and I started looking at the comics a little more closely. But I still keep a tiny bit of distance from the comics just because I want to stay true to what the show is and to the script that is in front of me and written. So, yeah.
In shows like The Walking Dead, where characters die at the drop of a hat, we've seen recently kind of a pattern where once characters start getting a little bit more exposition or they get a moment to give like a great speech, it's kind of like, oh, they're probably about to die. Does it ever kind of make you a little bit nervous whenever you're reading through a script and you see one of the characters start getting one of those moments? Do you ever get to be like, I don't like where this is going? Someone might be going away soon.
I disagree with you. I feel like, a lot of characters have had some really beautiful, strong moments and haven't died off. I feel like what's cool about the show is it's extremely unpredictable and that you, as the audience, are trying to figure out a pattern so that you don't have to be so scared for the characters. I feel like there is no pattern, and that it's and that although the deaths, I know it's important to the showrunner that the deaths mean something and further the other characters, so it's not just like meaningless, like so that we actually feel for it when it happens. Although they want that to happen, it should feel like anything's around the corner, like it's completely unpredictable. And there have been characters who have had like great big storylines and they haven't necessarily died off. There's also been characters who haven't been, you've just seen in the corner a bunch and then they get killed off and you're thinking, oh, I thought we were going to get to know them better. So I think anything could happen. I think, I could be on the show for a long time. I could be killed off on Sunday. I feel like it's completely unpredictable. And when I'm reading the script, I don't know what's next.
Episodes recently. And to that degree, after the whole thing that happened at the prison and everyone got splintered, most people ended up with a small group. Beth ended up with Daryl, Rick has Carl, but at first Michonne was alone and it had like a really strong psychological impact on her. What do you think would have happened to Beth if she had ended up alone instead of with Daryl after the prison fell apart?
Yeah, I don't know. I like to think that Beth would figure out something. One thing that's cool is you figure out in one of the episodes, it wasn't last Sunday, but the Sunday before, she's figuring out this little like fire hole, the Dakota fire hole, and like she's got some survival skills that she's learned along the way during her time at the prison. So I like to think that she would have figured out something and she would have just kept trying to find the group and would have survived. But who knows what could have happened. It's good that she's with Daryl.
I think we can agree that Daryl is pretty much the best possible partner for the zombie apocalypse. If you could have one person, I think Daryl is like the best person.
Or Michonne.
Michonne's really solid. Yeah.
Pretty solid.
Daryl or Michonne, you're pretty good.
Yeah.
But I have to ask this question just because I'm sure you've had it a thousand times at this point. But what would you do in the zombie apocalypse? Like if it went down, what would you do?
Well, it seems to me that it's all about supplies. So I feel like a safe place to be would be something like, a Walmart, a Costco, even like a hospital or something that has like those kinds of like extra safety measures. Although we've seen that those places haven't been safe either all the time. But that would be like my first go-to, I think. And finding good people to be with.
But moving into your music, one of your first performances of your music was at a convention for Walking Dead fans, if I remember correctly. Was it not?
Well, I performed a lot in New York at Rockwood before I basically was doing Walking Dead. But I did have a really cool, one of my first performances in Atlanta was at a convention center when we did the Walker Stalker convention. So that was really cool because a lot of Walking Dead fans came out and then hopefully they became music fans as well.
For those that aren't familiar with your music, how would you describe the style of music that you play and write?
Yeah, the kind of music that I write it's very lyric based. It's, I use my own life as inspiration as opposed to, when I'm acting, maybe I'm trying on a different character and trying on what their life is like. And maybe if, Ingrid Michaelson or Regina Spektor is, I guess, a similar sound, kind of pop and folky, doesn't always follow necessarily a form. So, yeah.
So you mentioned Regina Spektor, and would you say those are your influences? What would your influences be as a musician, as an actress?
Yeah, I do feel like maybe my sound is similar to theirs, but and they have definitely influenced me. I feel like some of my biggest influences are my friends, my musician friends. I go and see a lot of live music in New York, and the first people that I met when I moved to New York City were people that I met at like Rockwood Music Hall and the coffee shop where I worked, and a lot of them were artists and musicians, and I became fans of their bands, and I feel like they really inspire me to write.
Yeah, at your concert last night, you prefaced a lot of your songs with a personal story. Is there a story behind all of your songs, or do some of them come from more of like just an emotional point or a state of mind at the time?
Yeah, I mean, all of them I remember when I thought of the idea and actually sitting down to write them. But every song is different, and sometimes, there's just a feeling that I want to get out. But I can usually attach it to some sort of something I've been through, some sort of story.
So you've done Broadway, you're doing music now, and you're acting. How is it to run that full gamut in terms of the performing arts?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a balancing act and something that I'm still learning. Um, I'm super thankful just to be working, to be honest. So I feel like, yeah, I feel really thankful, but it is definitely a balancing act. It means that you don't just have, your acting career with that team of people that have been so helpful and awesome, but you also have this other side of the music business, which is a whole other almost full-time job. And so giving everything your full energy is is a lot. But it's all really exciting, and it's how I like to spend my time. So since I like to spend my time working, it's great. Working on music and acting in shows, it's all great.
And do you have any advice for aspiring musicians or actors that they want to get into the business?
Yeah, I don't like to give advice because everyone's journey and life is so different. And you can be like me and fill your day from the minute you wake up with this kind of stuff, or maybe you want to just play music on Friday nights, once a week or whatever. I feel like every artist is so different, and how it fulfills them and how it fits into their life is so different and unique to that person. Also, how anyone is going to break into this business or where you're going to work is completely different. I'm going to play completely different characters than maybe you would be cast in. So it's really difficult for me to give advice, except for that if you like to do something, you should try to do it every day. And opportunities will come, and you go with your gut.
All right, well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I hope that you're on The Walking Dead for quite a long time, and we get to see a lot more of Beth, and I'm looking forward to all the music you have to come.